hey everyone, we've got a brand new sponsor.
BagsUnlimited.com.
BagsUnlimited.com has a huge catalog of vinyl supplies, from record sleeves to storage boxes to cardboard mailers, record bags, and more. Whether you're just starting your collection or you're already the biggest record shop in the state, you can buy your vinyl supplies direct at BagsUnlimited.com.
And now, on with the show.
Welcome to The Vinyl Guide, the podcast for record collectors and music nerds. Here's your host, the biggest record nerd of them all, Nate Goyer.
Oh, well, hey everyone, it's Nate. I hope you're well. I'm now back in Sydney, Australia. Pretty happy, but quite exhausted still from the trip throughout Southern California. Spent about 3.5 weeks there. The No Values Festival was stunningly great. I'm sure you guys have seen plenty of chatter on that online. As well as all the other shows in the record shops I spent time at. And I really just want to take a moment to thank everyone who came out and said hi. I really enjoyed hanging out with you guys and fellow record nerds from California and beyond. Some people came from different states, which was huge and warmed the cackles of my heart, if that's a thing. I really enjoyed seeing you all. And thanks again. I hope we do it again soon. You know, maybe No Values 2025. They're already talking about it. It's going to be hard to top 2024, but hey, let's put it out in the universe. Maybe we'll do the same thing again next year. So far, I'm not totally done unpacking. Got a ton of great records and goodies on the trip. I'm putting pictures of that and memories up on the Instagram page at Vinyl Guide. Please jump up there if you want to get a look-see at all the loot and the memories of the last few weeks. And today, dear people, I am sharing a conversation I had with Vince Wilburn Jr., the nephew of Miles Davis and one of the handful of overseers of his legacy, which includes the archive of tapes and whatnot. We talk all about that today. What's in the vault? What's the unreleased materials? Where are the records of Miles Davis? What did he have in that collection? We talked to Vince about managing the legacy of one of the most prolific and beloved musicians in all of history. You know, the complexities that come along with it, the memories, and what's coming next and more. So Vince is a really good dude. He's also a fellow record collector. I look forward to having him on again. And by the way, there are always interesting things happening with Miles Davis releases. They always do something for record store days and some dotted throughout the year. Recently, they announced, I think, a 10 or 11 LP box set of Miles Davis's electric years. Albums like Big Fun, On the Corner, Bitches Brew, and my personal favorite, Tribute to Jack Johnson. This is a curated box set. It's got booklets, essays, and more. You can check it out over at milesdavis.com or order via vinylmeplease.com. Grab one of those box sets while you still can, and keep an eye out on the Miles Davis social media pages. They always have interesting stuff happening. Again, not just for RSD, but generally RSD, but also throughout the year. All right, and with that, let's talk to Vince Wilburn Jr. about managing the legacy of Miles Davis. All right, Vince, thank you so much for coming on the Vinyl Guide, mate. And wow, what a background you have there. I see the Emmy. I see all sorts of awards and accolades. Phenomenal work, not only from a musicianship perspective, but the management of the legacy of Miles, or your Uncle Miles, I should say.
Thanks, Nate. Thank you, man.
So here on the show, we talk about records. We talk about rare recordings, things like that, and also artifacts. And we've had different guests on that are managing legacies of different artists. We've had the folks who handle the Queen archives on. We've had Johnny Cash's son on, as well as multiple Zappa siblings. But man, I can't think of a more fitting person to join us than you and to speak about the legend of your uncle. Now, when is your Uncle Miles, and when is he Uncle Miles?
He's always Uncle. We used to call him the Chief.
Right.
So he's always Uncle Miles since I was a baby. You know. But Uncle Miles, like at home, or or I never really separated his uncle, Chief, or on the road we love to call him Chieftain, the Chief.
Yeah, that's the title he was good with that. That's what he wanted.
Yeah.
So managing an estate like your uncle's, I mean, it has so many challenges. What's required to manage an estate like that?
Well, with Aaron, Miles' son, and Cheryl, Miles' daughter, we make up Miles Davis Properties. So what we try to do, and along with Daryl Porter, our lawyer, he's the manager, right?
Hmm.
We try to have the representation of Miles and the legacy at a high standard. We always want to keep the integrity and the massive body of work of Uncle Miles at the highest level possible. And we make sure that we honor that and we do that.
So you have to kind of manage the requests that come in to use his image, his music, and say yes to the things that you think are of that high standard and no to the things that aren't.
Definitely. And this happens every other day. No, seriously, about 3 or 4 times a week, tops.
Yeah. What's an example of something you say no to, something that doesn't achieve that height?
Well, I'd hate to go publicly with it, but there was one rap group who wanted to do a sample of one of the songs, and we didn't think it was fitting for the body of work, the Uncle Miles and the legacy, and it was just it wasn't tastefully our cup of tea. Let's say that. So we took a pass. But the majority of the things that come across our desk, our catch our attention, we wholeheartedly say yes to.
Mm-hmm.
Every once in a while, it might be something that we say, this might not be quite a great fit.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Now, your uncle was on so many record labels during his career. Are all the recordings managed the same way, from Columbia to Prestige to?
Well, we have a beautiful relationship with all the labels, So yes, that's the way we operate, and that's a great thing because, first of all, Nate, we get along internally, Aaron, Cheryl, and Daryl and I, and then the relationships we have with the labels are great,
Mm-hmm.
So that helps. There's no bickering or no battling amongst us all.
Okay.
We're all on the same. It's very organic, and we're all on the same page, which is great.
Good. Yeah, and everyone recognizes the genius of Miles Davis and wants to represent it in the best way possible.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Do you have access to all the tapes? Are all the masters and multi-tracks accounted for?
Man, when Aaron and I go to New York, we're like kids in a candy store, and we listen to outtakes and we listen to things from the, like when we do a project, we'll, send us the files and we'll listen to all these outtakes, man, and we geek out on it, still, because we're family, but we're musicians, and and then Cheryl was like, look, it's up to you guys, whatever, she's Miles' daughter. And she says, I trust you and Aaron and Daryl. And so, we go at it, man. And it's like, wow, I remember one time we were listening to the second quintet, and Uncle Miles had Tony playing tempo blocks, just trying them out, And I was like, wow, Tony Williams playing tempo blocks. And, it was amazing. Things like that, little small things like that,
Mm-hmm.
Herbie's first time playing the Rhodes,
Yeah.
Which is not on tape, but you kind of picture yourself being there,
Mm-hmm.
on an electric piano,
So are all the tapes accounted for, even all the way back to the Blue Note days and prior? Do you know if anything's missing?
I don't know what's missing and what's, I just know that there's so much music and such a great body of work that when we start to consider doing a project, we have so much to pull from. So,
Right.
which is incredible, because
Mm-hmm.
Uncle Miles has been gone since 91,
Mm-hmm.
and his music, it's like his music lives on, and it's so much that we can choose from, which is great, great for us, great for the fans,
Is there a lot of unreleased stuff? Like, is it only 10% released or something like that? How would you generalize the amount that people can hear now and may still be in the vault and may see the light of day someday?
Nate, for our fans, for you and I, there's so much music. Long after we're gone, there'll be a lot of music, which is no, and I don't say that to try to be funny, but it's just that vast, which is amazing.
Mhm.
Yes, there's a lot of music, a lot of music in the vaults. Yes.
And in the vaults, I imagine you also have not only tapes, you have the master tapes, the multi-track tapes. Do you also collect and archive all the films and instruments, stage clothing, that sort of stuff? Is that in the archive as well?
We have climate controlled vaults for clothes, instruments, art. Yes, it's undisclosed where it is, though.
Of course. Yeah. We don't need anyone knocking on that door. But
right. And it's not here for our fans. It's not here in my house. So it's not, and it's not at Nate's.
Oh, it's definitely not here. No. Yeah.
But we did the We Want Miles. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It was an exhibit. It was a history of Miles. His career, and it traveled around the world. And we're going to start that back up soon. To go with the I'm sorry, not the bicentennial, but the centennial of Miles' 100-year birthday.
Oh, that's
which will
coming
be
up.
2026.
Ooh, almost. And by the way, almost exactly 2 years from now. May 26th is his birthday. Now, talk to me about the trumpets, the instruments. Like, is there a particular, I'm sure he had multiple trumpets. Is there one or two that are the most revered of the collection?
Well, we all have, we have a bunch of, let me see. We have the instruments that are in a well-kept, climate-controlled facility, right? Mm-hmm. And we've also loaned out a few of the instruments to different museums, right? And so when Uncle Miles passed, he's in a crypt in Woodlawn Cemetery in the Bronx in New York. And we have the moon, I don't know if you're familiar with the black trumpet with the gold moon and crescent stars. Mm-hmm. That's with him. So,
Wow. Okay, so that was buried with him then.
He's not buried. He's entombed.
Okay. Oh, entombed.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So, we do have horns.
Okay. That is clearly
we have a flugelhorn, a couple of flugelhorns, and some trumpets. We even have the trumpet that the roadies used to check for the wireless. We have that too.
Oh, okay.
It was like they call it the work trumpet.
And the mute as well. Did he have a preferred mute?
Yeah, the Harmon mutes. Yes, we have those. And the mouthpieces. It was there was a certain mouthpiece that he liked. So we have those too.
So here on the show, we're clearly record nerds, and I would imagine your uncle had quite an amazing record collection. Can you tell me a little bit about his music collection? You know what?
He had albums, right? But maybe at different stages of his career, he kept them. Out in Malibu, where I lived with he and Aaron, he had albums. It wasn't like what people would think, because he was always thinking about the future or what he was working on at the time. He very, very rare. I don't even think he kept like his music, his old records in the house. Never listened to him. So that was something that Aaron and I used to talk about. But I'm sure over the years he's had like vast collections of records, classical music, flamenco music, those types of albums.
Is there any understanding of some of the records he would gravitate towards? Like, it sounds like he wouldn't listen to his own music, which is pretty typical of an artist. Once they're done with it, they want to move on. But was there any artists that he tended to really gravitate towards, especially in the later years of his life?
Well, back when I was living with he and Aaron, it was, he was checking out a group called Kassav, and checking out Prince, Scritti Politti, Mr. Mister. I remember we went to a record day when he did a session with Toto, the group Toto. Mm-hmm. I remember we did a track called Broken Wings, was a Mr. Mister composition. Mm-hmm. He loved George Duke. MTV was very prevalent at the time in the 80s, as you may know.
Yeah.
And so he used to have the sound turned down, and we'd be at the house, and he'd have some music that he was working on, maybe a record he was working on. And if it was something that he saw that he dug on the video, he'd turn it up, right? And then he'd get the record label on the phone and say, "Send me whatever it was," and the next day it would be at the house, and that was how he gravitated towards certain things that caught his eye. It was visual, and then he turned the sound up, and then he said, he dug it, and the next day it would be at the house.
I just see him. Hey, send me that Billy Squier record.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know, Billy, but yeah, it was something like that.
I want to hear. You got that new Bananarama?
You know what the killer thing was, man? When like Michael Jackson, when we did Human Nature, that video was that whole album was incredible, and so it would happen like that. Very organic, very like he would hear melodies inside of things. He would have the trumpet close to him, so it was wild how he would turn it up, turn the sound up, and play the melody to whoever it was on TV. He that ear. That genius in him. That was something to witness.
What are your recollections of him listening to rap? Like back in the day, that would have been Run DMC. I think even NWA was coming out while he was around. Did he have an opinion or any thoughts on that?
Yeah, he dug it. He dug hip hop. Doo-Bop was his record when that he was working on when he passed away, and so Easy Mo B, who I think you should really talk to. He's got stories about how that whole thing came to fruition, and no, he was into hip hop, man. I mean, into it where he caught his, he dug it and wanted, and that was his next move, before he passed away.
Any particular artist he gravitated towards in that genre?
And not that we talked about, it's just that once he got with Easy Mo B, and I think there was a call made to Russell Simmons, and Russell. There was a bunch of producers that he auditioned for, lack of a better word, and I think Easy Mo B might have been the last one of 30 hip hop producers, and so Easy would have to tell you the story, and he came back the next day, and Uncle Mar said, "You want some fish?" And then and then that was it, But let Easy tell you the story. It's pretty funny.
Okay.
But after hearing all these producers. Uncle Miles, he was, Uncle Miles had a way of hearing something in someone or vibing with somebody, and he gravitated, or they both gravitated toward each other, and that was Easy Mo B.
Did he have plans? I suspect he did have plans of what he was going to do in '92 and '93, or where he wanted to go before he passed. What were some of those plans? Hey there, audiophiles. If you're seeking stylish furniture to showcase your stereo and record collection, well, look no further than SidetrackedWorkshop.com. Sidetracked Workshop designs extraordinarily elegant record cabinets and consoles that add sophistication and panache to your music hobby. Handcrafted in the good old USA in the vinyl-loving city of Portland, Oregon, Sidetracked Workshop's designs are a music lover's dream. Made with real walnut veneered wood and brass accents, these gorgeous designs add class and taste to the record room and ship fully assembled and ready to enjoy. Just check out the designs for yourself at SidetrackedWorkshop.com. Look, you spend thousands of dollars on records. Don't keep them in a crate, and don't risk your records on those feeble wooden pegs from IKEA. Your music deserves the dignity of Sidetracked Workshop. That's SidetrackedWorkshop.com. Elegant solutions for the vinyl lifestyle. Did he have plans? I suspect he did have plans of what he was going to do in '92 and '93, or where he wanted to go before he passed. What were some of those plans?
We never talked about it. We never talked about it. He's double Gemini, Nate. So you never know what he was going to do next. He would change clothes 6 times a day. So I didn't know what music is. You never knew. It was very instinctive. Very, very now.
Did he make demos or little recordings like ideas, or was it just all kind of natural in his head and?
In his head, or he would have a little dictation, those little Sony dictation machines.
Right.
A lot of it was in his head, or he would call a session. If he called the studio, that was it. They'd set up a record day for him. So everything was like, spot on, spontaneous, and he was one of the only artists that I know of that the tape could run continuously. Because he always said there was a song inside, a melody, or a song inside of a song. And a lot of times we would record that way.
So he could come up, he could wake up in the morning, he's got an idea, 9 a.m. By 1 o'clock, he could have a session assembled, putting it together.
Definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
And he always had a piano at the house, or Fender Rhodes close by, and he heard it. He said he used to say he hears music 24 hours of the day.
Did he ever explain or share like how it is he listened to music? And I'll give you an example. Frank Zappa, he always imagined music as colors and shapes that he saw. And when he played, it was almost like him kind of in a kaleidoscope, right? Did you ever have those conversations? Or did he ever share about, what his experience was like with music?
No, we never had that discussion because, it would come to him in all, different forms. And I used to just always ask him to play chords because I love the way he would play chords at the piano. He'd play some of the most amazing chord voicings, and just walking around the house and just picking up the horn and playing them, At the time it was like just natural, but now it's like, wow.
Yeah.
When I think about it, it's like Uncle Miles walking around the house just playing all these beautiful melodies and getting on the phone and getting guys in the studio, and and it was always, I want to state this, there was always music playing, always music that he was working on playing, either a live concert or something, playbacks of the studio of the project he was working at the time, continuously. In the car, in the home, in the house. Cassettes, man, you talk about cassettes. We must have gone through about hundreds of Walkmans. Cause he would break the headphones and lose the but never lost the music, never lost the cassettes. But he went through a few Walkmans.
So, just music for him is just like breathing. It's just all over the place, just like his oxygen.
Nate, wait, maybe we should share what Walkmans were. Walkmans were. It is 2024
for you youngsters.
So Walkmans were made by Sony, and then there was a thing called cassettes, and cassettes went inside the Walkmans. So.
And people would take them what we used to call outside.
Right. So, yeah.
So, okay. So back to his record collection. Do you know what happened to Miles's record collection? Like after he passed, where is that record collection now?
We have everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And when I was coming up, he used to sit. There was a guy named Granville White. We called him Granny. And back in the day, for our listeners and fans, they had, this, but they had regional record guys, So Sony Music was Columbia Records at the time. Granville White was the Midwest regional executive. So he would call Granny, as we affectionately called him. And he said, Granny, send Jimi Hendrix Band of Gypsies, or I want my nephew to hear Sly. And so at my parents' house, where I grew up in Chicago, you'd get all these records. One time he sent the immortal Otis Redding, because he wanted me to check out Al Jackson. He sent Band of Gypsies. He loved Buddy Miles, so he sent me that. He sent me In Time, the Sly Stone, and he sent The Big Payback. He loved James Brown's Drummers, and that he loved that record, The Big Payback. So this would happen on, this was like if he wanted me to hear something, or he wanted to send my mom and my dad some music, that's how he would call the label and say, send these records, and within a few, 2 or 3 days, we'd get all these albums sent to the house, and I would just go down to the basement and just study and listen to them. That's how I grew to love vinyl so much, because then, back in the day, you sit and listen to the records. You don't pick one, a single, and I would love reading the album cover, looking at the art and the album, and listening to each song. And my boys and I, we would get together and critique and listen to the record and flip the other side over from beginning to end. That's the lost art, man, to enjoy and put yourself immerse yourself in the music, you know?
Yeah.
You know?
It commands your attention. And,
Oh, big time, big time, big time. It's like a good novel, you know, but it's a
Yeah.
sonic novel, you know? So it's great.
And reading the liner notes, you find like, oh, that's the drummer of this other album I like. That's
right. And then, so when the band came to town, whoever we were digging, we'd know the musicians. We'd hang out backstage, and we knew who was playing, and we get front row tickets, and all my boys, and we would just sit and and dig it. You know, it's great times, man. Great times of music. And they had a record store called Rose Records on Wabash in Chicago, and we'd run down to Rose and buy we'd chip in and buy an album. And we share the album, and for 2 days, one of my boys would have it. The third day, I'd have it. We'd pass around. Unless I was getting free things from Sony, from Columbia, and then everybody would be at my house.
You were their best friend.
Right. But that was fun times, man. That was really fun times. To witness and read and see who, like you said, who was playing drums or who was playing bass or keyboard, piano player.
Now, I would imagine that you grew up as a musician. Your uncle obviously is one of the most famous musicians on the planet. Was it tougher on you to be playing with him? Was he tougher on you than maybe he was other non-family musicians?
No, he was tough on all of us, because he demanded the best. And I loved it. I loved when he would call my mom and my dad and said, "You can't curse on here, right?"
You can. Go for it.
He would call my parents and say, "Your son played his ass off last night." That really made me feel great. But for the record man with the horn, and I probably told the story a million times. We had a band in Chicago, and Uncle Miles used to call to my parents' house and have my mother put the phone down, right? And he listened to us rehearse. I don't know if you know the story or not. So this went on for maybe a month. But each night, my parents, if our grades were up, we could rehearse 5 times a week and play on the weekends.
Yeah. So he's listening to your band rehearse over the phone for hours.
A long coil cord, Nate. Maybe you remember those kitchen reach down all the way down through the house. There weren't wireless phones then.
Right.
And so my mom would take this long coil cord phone, the receiver, down the stairs, and he'd listen to us the entire rehearsals, and he would critique us. And one day after we rehearsed, we'd pass the phone around, and I guess he heard what he needed to hear to say, "Hey, I could work with these guys." And he flew us to New York, and that record was Man with the Horn. And I remember Dr. George Butler was the executive producer of the record, and we rehearsed at his house, his brownstone. And we recorded like 15 songs, and Shout and Man with the Horn made the record at that time. It was great. Gil would come. Gil Evans, today's his birthday. Gil would come to the studio and just chill in the corner. Tio Macero was the producer, and Stan Tonko, the amazing Tio Macero, Stan Tonko were producer and engineer. It was great, man. It was great. And we were at the famous studio, Columbia Records, So
first class all the way.
Oh, man. And room service. Kids with free room service.
That's important.
Kids from Chicago, man. Free room service and limos.
So, your uncle had gone through so many highs and lows in his career, and the music industry is notorious for, its unpredictability and sharks and everything. What sort of advice did he give you on building a career in music?
Well, kind of let us figure it out for ourselves. But he would always say, "Watch your money," and watch, set up your publishing, write songs, get a great lawyer, He said, "Have an accountant watch the other accountant," But he was very, he would tell us to watch your money and stay on your instrument. Don't become lax. Don't become complacent where you don't grow on your instrument. It was stay on the music, stay on the business, and write, compose. Be a well-rounded musician.
Okay.
So that's something that stuck with us all, I'm sure.
Did he have a lot of friends, like musicians that he would hang out with? Would he socialize or chat with folks like, I don't know, from the old days, Sonny Rollins and those guys? Did he have those sort of relationships?
Guys would call, and sure, he kept in touch with certain guys. And when we were at different festivals around the world, when he would see somebody or see some of the guys, or at the hotel when we were checking in the lobby, he'd be happy to see guys. You know what I mean? I remember we were in one hotel, and no, we were in the airport once, and Billy Higgins saw Billy Higgins, and he gave Billy a big hug, and if we were checking into a hotel, he would see BB. We were on tour with BB King, and certain things like you see Dizzy, or we were in Paris and saw some of his old friends from back in the day.
Right.
He loved Max. Max would.
Max Roach. But if there was, but if there was like a, hey, Chief, Wayne Shorter's on the phone. Would they like have these conversations?
Definitely, man. Mm-hmm. Wayne, because they a lot of history together.
Mm-hmm.
If he was in the mood to talk or to see someone, sure,
Mm-hmm.
But definitely, some of those relationships were very very sincere and meant a lot to him.
So going through, like, what are maybe some artifacts that you found in your uncle's things that would astound people? Hey there, I gotta tell you about the Groove Washer. Not because I have to, but because I want to. The Groove Washer is the best record cleaner you can get. And if you have a vinyl collection, you need to keep it clean. Dirt and dust lead to groove wear, which affects the sound and value of your record collection. Use the Groove Washer to clean before each play, and your ears and future pocketbook will thank you. Ask for the Groove Washer by name at your local record store, or go direct to groovewasher.com and use promo code VinylGuide10 at checkout. Groove Washer is a great holiday gift. Why not send one to a friend? groovewasher.com, discount code VinylGuide10. Do it now. So going through, like, what are maybe some artifacts that you found in your uncle's things that would astound people?
I found a DAT of Uncle Miles playing Natural Woman at a sound check at Soldier Field. And the Natural Woman, Aretha Franklin, man, killer, beautiful, things like that. Like I said about the Tony and Temple blocks, and just I'm always looking for outtakes or something that I don't think fans or people are hip to or have heard before. So I do this thing called Friday Miles with Mark Ruffin for Sirius Jazz. So this past Friday, I was playing some things like some obscure that I think are obscure that people weren't up on. So I'm always like, that's the kind of things I love.
I love what you guys are doing with the recordings, like the that you not dare to forget that release, the Record Store Day release, the Champions one. Tribute to Jack Johnson is my favorite album. That was my entry point to your uncle's work, and I kind of spread from there. And to be able to hear some of those songs from a different perspective was amazing. So the way you guys
I didn't know William Cobham. It took me, Billy Cobham. That was William Cobham. I was like, oh yeah. And then I tease Billy about that now, but I hear you, man. It was like, man, when I dig this, when I saw the Argarta, that band with Michael Henderson and Al and those guys.
Mm-hmm.
Nate, I went to my parents had tickets, and my road manager called my mom, and my mom came up to the basketball court and got me and all my boys, and I said, hey man, go home, shower, meet you at the Auditorium Theater, backstage. Mm-hmm. And she had these block of tickets, and we went to this concert, and you're talking about mind blowing, life changing. It was like tribal funk. It was amazing to me, and Pete Cozy and Michael Henderson and Tume and Al and Reggie Lucas, and I think I saw it with Sonny Fortune and Dave Liebman at two different times.
Mm-hmm.
It really changed my life. So that's where I really like whoa. But before that, I used to go to the Plug Nickel in Chicago in Old Town. and see that, man. I was little. I was just grasping it and looking and when you're a kid, you don't know, but you're trying to grasp it and trying to hold on and figure it out, and Tony Williams told Wallace Roney, he said, man, I could tell Vince was going to be a drummer by the way he used to stare at me, because they all look larger than life to me. You know what I mean? And so I just, you speaking about That You're Not Dare to Forget, that was a record produced by Lenny White and myself, and I call him Uncle Ron Carter.
Oh yeah.
Lenny calls him God Bass. He played on the record and came in, and I looked at Uncle Ron and played with Uncle Ron, and I hearken back to my childhood. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's how close those guys are to me. Herbie Wayne and Uncle Ron, and God bless him, and Tony. I used to call Tony would call me just to talk about cymbals or talk about drums. I remember he was thinking about using Daryl Jones, my friend from Plays with the Stones, and we grew up together,
yep.
play with Miles. Yeah, he was thinking about putting a new band together, and he asked me how did I like playing with Daryl. I said, man, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Get him. If you dig him, Tony, call him. But it never got to. You know what I mean? We lost Tony.
I got a story about Ron Carter. He was on the show, and he and I were talking afterward. He's such a nice guy. He's just this beautiful soul, right?
Now, hold before you tell that story. Yeah. He's got the most amazing collection of music, and he's an audio. He's got like an amazing. Did you talk about the stereo and the chair where you sit in this chair in his place? Okay, go ahead.
I got a chair now based on that conversation.
Okay, go ahead.
So he and I were talking kind of off air, blah blah blah, and I'm in Australia. My mother's in California, and he's just like, "What's your mother's address?" Right? He sent her some music. He sent her some records, and it was just such a beautiful thing. He just wanted to share.
You see this, right? Ron Carter.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Yeah, he sent me this. Yeah, but he's so beautiful, man. He's like, and he comes in very prepared,
Mm-hmm.
And I think he 1 or 2 takes, and he was out. He said, "What's next? When's the next record date?" Because he was in and out that quick.
Yeah.
A very, very serious,
prepared.
very on. Yeah. It's amazing. It's amazing.
I knew that interview was going to start on time.
And right. And the sound, man, the sound he had. Oh, so on the record we had Ron Carter, we had Stanley, we had Marcus and Daryl.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that's ever been done before. And I witnessed like these sessions, like incredible.
Another friend of the show, Vernon Reed.
Oh, Vernon, man, Vernon came in 1 take, 2 takes.
Yeah.
Pedals. What do you want? I mean, those guys are the top of the tier.
Mm-hmm.
The guys that have come in, very serious about the music, and we have Bernard Wright on keyboards. Bernard Wright, and so Vernon came in. Everybody laced it, man. Pedrito, John Schofield, Wallace.
Pretty much everything that comes out from the Miles estate, there's generally a record store day release. It's just that it's a de facto. You just got to get it right. It's it's the quality is really high. What do you think is something that people get wrong about your uncle?
With Man with the Horn, they didn't understand the single with Randy singing The Man with the Horn.
Mm-hmm.
But people don't know that Uncle Miles called us, and he specifically asked Randy, "I want a radio song. I want to get on the radio."
Mm-hmm.
And Randy and Bobby Irving composed The Man with the Horn. They thought that he was doing it for his nephew. Never that.
Mm-hmm.
Never that. That nepotism shit was not. It doesn't sit well with Uncle Miles. He said music ain't got no friends. Music doesn't have any friends. It's about the music. So that's something that I want to put out there. That he wanted certain things. It's Directions of Music by Miles Davis. So wherever he wanted to go with the music, it was up to him.
Mm-hmm.
If you didn't dig it, I remember when he said, his critic said, "Well, I don't know where you're going, Miles, with this new music." And he said, "What am I supposed to do? Wait?" Wait for You or something. So that was the beauty of Uncle Miles, just evolving, evolving. I mean, what musician in our lifetime has played with Charlie Parker and Prince?
No, he's one of one. That's clear.
He's one of one, and so you can't. I hate, and critics are going to be critics. Mtume used to call them crickets. Crickets are going to be crickets, and they're going to not like everything. But he didn't care about that. I remember we were in a car going to the airport after one of the concerts in Europe, and it was a beautiful review of the concert, right? And he took it from me and tore it up. He said, "I don't read reviews. I don't want you reading reviews, good or bad. Just get ready for the next concert."
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you what he called me after that. Motherfucker.
How did he look at did he give any guidance on how he wanted his legacy, how he wanted to be remembered, or how he wanted his legacy to be managed after he was gone?
No, nothing. Because he probably thought he'd live forever. Well, like we all do. We want to live as long as we can. So we never talked about that. We just try to. I have dreams about him, Nate, and sometimes he'll come to me and I'll see his face and he's smiling, and then it'll just disappear. So between Aaron, Cheryl, and Daryl and I, we're just trying to, as keep it, like I said it earlier, release and keep it tastefully done. Release great music, man, because it's a vast collection of music in the vaults, man, and we're fans too, So either you love it or you don't love it, but it's Miles, and we try to get it out as fast as as tastefully and as fast as we can. But it's we don't want to oversaturate the market,
sure.
But we want to do it. It's got to be special, It's got to be special from us to the fans. That's what makes it Miles.
Well,
if that makes sense,
No, absolutely. And look, when you told me,
down the artwork. It's not to cut you off. I'm sorry, but even down to the artwork, to the credits, to the to the photos.
It's all done with such high taste, and that's one thing I've noticed. And so when you're telling that story about your dream, wherever his soul is, I'm sure it must be happy with the way it's being represented and managed with respect and quality, right? You're not just burping out any old session he did, but you're picking the right things. You're putting them together. They're beautiful packages. So yeah, I think the job you guys are doing is probably an example for other artists and other estates that are kind of going through or will eventually go through a similar kind of transition.
We get that a lot, Nate, and we're honored, because that's what we're about. Integrity, the integrity of the music and the integrity of our loved one,
So back to records really quick. And I'm sure Kevin's talked to you all about this. He's such a record nerd
Man,
as well.
let me tell you something. I dial up Kevin like I'm looking for this Cannonball Adderley release, and Zev's my guy too. He's my family, he's great friends of both of ours. And if Zev doesn't have it and Kevin doesn't have it, we can't find it. So then I got a friend in Japan, and between the three of them, I always find what I'm looking for, So
if we were going through your uncle's record collection, what are some things you think would surprise people? Some things he liked that may not have been quite what people would think Miles Davis would listen to?
I can't answer that, Nate, because I don't know. He didn't have like a collection like you and I have. Maybe he did at some point, but not when I was around him. He didn't. He just had a bunch of cassettes and
okay.
And I don't even think we had a turntable. It was more like I said, the Walkmans and the cassette deck, and he had a cassette player in the car, and the majority of the music that he was listening to, the music that he was working on, or what was concert tapes. Big on concert tapes, there's a ton of concert tapes. Or if it was a record with Marcus, or if Prince was sending some things over to the house, then it was things that he would play, according to the project he was working on.
So you guys would host like Prince over to the house. People would come to see your uncle with reverence while they're in town.
I've never seen. I've living in Malibu. Prince never visited. Mm-hmm. They would talk on the phone a lot, and Uncle Miles went up to Paisley to hang with, to hang out with Prince. But he never came by the house when I was there. I remember Lionel Richie came by to buy a piece of art. He drove out to Malibu, and but a lot of guys would call. A lot of artists would call. Mm-hmm. He was very private. Uncle Miles was very private, and who could would come by, and and he wouldn't. It wasn't like they would have jam sessions. Never at the house. So it wasn't about that. He would go to either a studio or catch him on the road or that type of thing.
So you've got, as you're managing the estate and you've got all the tapes, you're putting together, like there was just a box set of his Electric Years. Does the album art still exist? Like the cover of On the Corner or things like that? Is that still something that is within the estate, or where that art piece is? Hey there, all you record nerds. I want to tell you about BagsUnlimited.com. BagsUnlimited.com has a huge selection of vinyl record supplies. Whether you collect LPs, 7-inch singles, 78 shellacs, or anything in between, BagsUnlimited.com will sort you out. From polyline sleeves to cardboard record mailers to 7-inch storage boxes and archive quality record sleeves, protect your records of any size and shape at BagsUnlimited.com. Whether you have a small personal record collection or you're running a massive record shop, you can grab a small supply or even buy in bulk at BagsUnlimited.com. And they've got some really incredible, unique stuff. BagsUnlimited.com even has special size sleeves made especially to protect your box sets, storage boxes and sleeves for cassette tapes, protective supplies for reel-to-reel, and yes, even 8-tracks. Just go to BagsUnlimited.com, click on audio supplies, and prepare to be impressed by all the options they have. That's BagsUnlimited.com. Does the album art still exist? Like the cover of On the Corner or things like that? Is that still something that is within the estate, or where that art piece is?
Sure. Yeah. But we'd have to go to the people who did the artwork, or the estates of the people who did the artwork. But yeah, we do have it.
Oh, okay.
We do deals with whomever art we're going to use.
Okay.
Or we'll create something new and different.
What's the most difficult thing about managing a catalog and a legacy like your uncle's?
Well, if you love music, what's difficult about that?
There's got to be the ugliest supermodel. What's the most difficult thing?
Hey, Nate, I hate to say this, but I don't find it difficult at all. When you love music like you and I and Aaron and Cheryl and Daryl, it's like we can't wait till the next project. I've never, I love it. I love it. I love playing my music. I love playing Chief's music. I love listening to outtakes and putting a compilation together. So it's never like oh damn, here we come with another. Never that. It's like It's excitement. It's exciting. It's like watching a new movie's out for the first time and you want to see it. You want to be at the premiere. So
okay. And what are you working on now? Anything you could share about any upcoming projects?
We're working on a new. I'm gonna have Melissa and Amy get together with you, but there's a couple of different things we're going to have for the birthday, and that I've sent out to you, a notice, and we're working on That You Not Dare to Forget. That was the EP, so we're going to go. Lenny and I are going back in the studio at the end of the month and work on some new music, some more music with various artists.
Wow.
So, yeah.
All right.
But we'll be in touch with you about the new releases, because I want you to be like one of the first to know what's going on for the birthday and moving forward.
I'd love to be on that list.
Sure.
Very, very interesting. Okay, so Vince, I'm about to wrap up. Is there anything you wanted to talk about that we haven't talked about?
Just for music lovers, man. Just I hope they love Uncle Miles and love the music like like I do, like we do, like the family does, like you do, and just keep an open mind, because you're talking about someone who didn't look, he never relived the past, he always looked towards the future. So whatever we decide to release, just know that it's under the love of what we feel Uncle Miles would want, it's a blessing. So don't say, oh, another this, another that. Yeah. I read all the people's, remarks, and I'm always defending, why we did this. And then I stopped doing that. I stopped reading that because it's music. And just keep an open mind, you're not going to love everything everybody does, No. You're not going to, so.
And the people who love it don't necessarily express that. They just love it. The people who have a chip on their shoulder or want to say something about it, those voices seem to be louder for some reason.
Well, people, they have keyboards at their with their fingertips, and so they can say and do and hide behind that, which is okay because you write what you want, feel the way you want to feel, but just know that we love music. We love our uncle. We love which in my case, my uncle, and Aaron and Cheryl, their father. And we're just trying to give you the best, and the best of Miles, and in all parts of his career. This is Miles Davis, man. From birth of the cool to hip hop and everything in between. So just keep an open ear, man. I do.
And with an artist like Miles, with so many different phases, so many parts of his career, sometimes it takes the right entry point. Like as a younger man, I listened to Kinda Blue and I didn't really get it right away. And it took me a while. And then eventually the thing I latched onto was Tribute to Jack Johnson. That was the entry point that I was then able to traverse backwards and forwards in the career. And that's when, an English phrase, the penny dropped and I was able to get it.
Well, man, can you imagine? I'm at the Plug Nickel. I'm a kid at the Plug Nickel and didn't really get it until years later. So we're all, we just love it. We just love music, and you're not going to. A lot of times, you're not going to get music the first time you hear it.
Right.
I mean, personally speaking, I'm not. But I'm going to go back and I'm going to revisit it, and I'll pull out some vinyl that I haven't heard. I remember I pulled out Get Up With It. And that record blew my mind. Big Fun. That music, that album blew my mind. And Miles in Tokyo with Tony, Burnin', 4 and More, Tony, Burnin', So when I say Burnin', you know what I mean. He's playing his butt off. So it's like you can just pull out I like to revisit certain records and just sit and wow, because it's like watching a movie. I still watch The Godfather, and I still love it.
I watch Godfather 1 and 2 once a year. Once a year.
Right. So there you go. There you go.
Yeah. So what? So out of his albums, which one's your Godfather?
I have Agartha, that I was playing when you called, and Bitches Brew. I have a few. Kinda Blue.
Yeah.
And of course, everything I played on. No, I'm just kidding.
Have you heard the recent reissues, the UHQR versions of Kinda Blue? The ones?
Yeah, killer. Yeah, beautiful. Yeah. It's amazing.
Are those like the ultimate pressings then?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, man. It's I remember we were doing something with we did something with Sketches of Spain. It was like being in the orchestra, The sound was, I mean, man, really, it's like it's Miles Davis. It's Miles Davis. Just you could pick apart it. You could pick something in his career, a time in his career, and just pull some of that vinyl. You don't have to like everything. I do. You do, maybe, but I love everything. I love having the choices, at my fingertips where I can pull a piece of music and listen to it and yeah, wow. And hear the progression of his career, the stages, I'm a geek. I'm a vinyl geek, man. You know.
You and me both. Now tell me about some of the special vinyl. Well, we still have a few minutes. Tell me about some of the special vinyl in your collection.
It's downstairs, man. That's a whole nother hour. You know, I've got things that I've got, Nate. I have records that I don't open because I just dig the covers. You know, the artwork. You know, but that's another hour.
Do you have? Well, let me ask you this.
Seriously,
do you have any of your uncle's test pressings? Do you have any pre-release stuff? Anything like that?
Yes. Yeah. I have acetates. Man, please. Come on, man. I'm a geek.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that stuff survived because it sounds like it wasn't really, he didn't really think about it too much.
Yeah. And whatever I don't have, I've just saved it for prosperity. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I even have like test pressings of Warp things that I'm like, I'm going to keep them anyway, you know?
Yeah.
Because sometimes they come through FedEx or whatever, they're warped. And not the old, I'm talking about modern pieces that I'm listening to, but I keep everything.
Yeah.
I'm a vinyl hoarder.
All right. Well, look, Vince, thank you so much for coming on the show. And we will do another hour once we get closer to the centennial. I'd love to hear about some of the interesting stuff that's in your collection. And again, I think everyone listening and beyond does recognize the genius of your uncle and appreciate the work that you and the estate are doing. It's phenomenal. Keep them coming. We're definitely enjoying them. And mate, you're welcome back anytime.
Thank you, Nate, man. Thanks for the love.
Oh, man. I've always wanted to have Vince on the show. I'm glad we were finally able to make that happen. They do great work over there. MilesDavis.com. Check out all the stuff that they got. They generally do a record store day release each year and some other things. That Electric Years box set looks incredible from Vinyl Me Please. So check that out. And, of course, follow them on social media and be alerted whenever they come out with something new and cool. All right, that's it for this episode of The Vinyl Guide. Thank you so much for tuning in. Big shout out, big thanks to everyone who's sharing these episodes on social media, putting them on Facebook or putting them in Reddit forums or Facebook groups. That's huge. I really appreciate that. And those of you who are leaving positive reviews, that is fantastic as well. Thank you so much, each and every one of you. We'll be back shortly with a brand new episode. So until we talk next time, get out there and buy some records, people. Cheers.